Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Oana.
Oana and I today spent some time reading a massive article about the reason why the housing market didn't crash the way it was expected to not to crash, right? And then we have looking into next year.
Right. So if all of this sounds interesting to you, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the video, share the video, leave us a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. If you are one of our regular viewers, thank you for watching, and we will reward you with a nice long video about everything we learned and so much more than what we wanted to learn.
So much more, yeah, because there was conflicting data.
Yes.
In the article, but we sort of hit some of the high points in here. This certainly wasn't the juiciest, best. Like there was a range of opinions, and there was stuff that was like really sort of very like, I don't know.
There were some uber optimists and some super pessimists. There were lots of people in the middle. So we'll kind of go through some of that with you and let you decide what you think 2023 and 2024 will be like.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is how demand affected this year, and then how it's likely to affect next year. So there's a quote from the article. There was a statistic that RE/MAX had gotten. It says, according to a recent survey conducted by RE/MAX in partnership with SWNS Media Group, 84% of Gen Z, 79% of millennials, and 61% of survey respondents who were 77 or older. So they basically took everybody but boomers and Gen Xers, okay? So if you don't know what those are, go look them up. But
really easy, us.
We're Gen Xers. Boomers are older than us, and then 77 and older, like older boomers and those people. So they took the ends of the market, not that kind of middle of the market. They plan to buy a house or condo in the next few years. That's a ton of people.
What I thought was funny is when I first read it, I read it twice, because when they talked about 61% of the 77-year-olds plan to buy something, I'm thinking, what? Like, these people are buying their final piece of real estate, and I don't mean the one above ground. But, there is a case to be made that they are buying their retirement home, that they're downsizing, that sort of thing. So I'll kind of go with that, but I'm still voting that they're buying their final piece of real estate.
So let's talk about that really quick. The first people they talk about, these people are hungry to own a house.
Right.
Why are young people more likely to want to buy a house than, if, say, first-time home buyers? They've never owned a home. They've been renters the whole time.
Right. So
what's appealing to them?
So they want something of their own. They're at that point in their lives where they're done with their education, their careers have been established, and they're ready to take the next step to be grown-ups, so to speak. Right? They're in relationships, maybe they're having kids, they're ready to put down roots, and part of putting down roots is having some sort of permanence, and there's no more permanent thing than purchasing a home and putting down roots in that way.
If you're a first-time home buyer, that means in the past they've only been renting.
Right.
And what have rents done probably since the first apartment they rented out of college?
All rents have gone up.
Rents have gone up. So they probably recognize that, like their friends who bought a home are probably talking about, oh, well, we bought that house 6 years ago and it's been great because our payment hasn't changed. And, oh, now it's worth like $200,000 more. And they're like, oh, well, I haven't, like, you have $200,000 of wealth. I don't have anything, right? So some of that is mimetic, like the sort of, they see other people and copy it.
Right.
Like, oh, that worked for them, so I want to do it too.
Right. That's part of it. But okay. I think the other part is that, remember, we're at a point where interest rates are keeping some people from purchasing. So if they can't purchase, they're renting. So that is putting pressure on rentals, right?
Right.
So there are less rentals, and what is out there, the rents are going up. So all of this is kind of playing into that too, saying, hey, why make somebody else's mortgage payment when I can make my own, right?
Okay. This was a different survey. According to our 2022 first-time homebuyer study, 58% of consumers said they are likely to purchase in the next 12 months, and which that won't happen because that's like more. There won't be enough houses, and we're going to talk about that. That's the supply side. 70% still see homeownership as an important step to building wealth. Now, Oana, why is so real estate is the number one way for the average person to build wealth.
Right.
And why is that? What's unique about real estate that makes it easy to build wealth?
Right. So real estate is one of those things that you're going to be paying for living somewhere no matter what, right? And so that's a cost that you are going to have to pay periodically, usually every month. So then why not pay that toward your equity? The thing about purchasing a home is that it fixes your housing cost usually, because it's usually a fixed rate loan. And as your earnings increase, now you have more disposable income because the price that you're paying for your home, it doesn't increase the way rent does. So this is a good way to build wealth, because remember, part of your mortgage payment every month goes toward decreasing your loan balance, and at some point you will have that loan paid off.
Here's the story of the first house I ever bought. I was a 22-year-old second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, stationed in Pensacola, and I went to an agent to find a rental house. And so we went to the agent, and I said, hey, I'm looking to rent a house. And the agent said, well, why would you want to rent a house when you could buy a house? And I go, well, I haven't saved for down payment. I'm only 22, and I just got commissioned not that long ago. I was in Pensacola for flight training. And the agent said, oh, well, you can buy a house with zero down, and the payment on your mortgage will be the same as it would be for rent. And I went, are you sure? She goes, yeah. So I looked at a couple houses, and we found a house where our rent payment or our mortgage payments would be $550. It was really nice. It was brand new too. It was brand new, 3-bedroom. It was like, God, this is really nice. I can't believe I'm going to own it. So that's to Oana's point. You have to live someplace anyway. So I took the step into home ownership completely accidentally. Wasn't even considering it, because I was going to leave Pensacola and probably go to one of the other bases eventually for training. But I decided, well, I'll just keep the house as a rental. So with that also being in mind, there was something else important in there. If you want to make money, there's a saying, you have to make money, you have to have money, right? It takes money to make money. But real estate is one of the only assets where you can borrow very easily, backed by the real estate. You couldn't go to the bank and say, hey, can I get a 4% loan because I want to invest in all these tech stocks I think are going to be up 20% over the next year or two, and I'm going to borrow a bunch of money and then put it in the stock market, and then I'll just pay you $500, $1,000 a month, right? They're not going to want to do that. They're going to be like, well, what's it backed by? Oh, these stocks. Well, there's risk. We don't want it, right? So you're probably not going to be able to borrow, $400,000 to invest in the stock market.
Probably not.
So you think that helped? You think that's a big thing too, that there's this whole industry that helps people finance these things, these like wealth building machines?
Right. So, I mean, part of it is the way our whole social structure is designed around that, right? I mean, the government incentivizes you to purchase a house by letting you have a home mortgage deduction, and by letting you deduct property taxes and all of this. And then you've got, all the ancillary businesses that are associated with that, like the mortgage companies and the title companies and real estate companies, home inspectors, all kinds of people that are involved in that. The old saying is that something like close to 90 people touch a real estate transaction from when you make the offer on the house until you close on the house, because of everybody involved. And all of these people make a living from it. So much of the U.S. economy is actually involved either directly or indirectly in real estate. So, and this is just when you purchase a house, but if you consider, all the construction people and all the industries that support the construction people, I mean, it's really probably the single biggest portion of our economy.
It is. No, it's the largest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the number is 2 trillion with a T dollars of real estate is transacted every year, and that there's $100 billion in commissions paid to agents, plus the billions of dollars that pay everybody else throughout the thing. That's why we have 2 million real estate agents in the U.S. It's literally the largest industry in real estate.
And there are all kinds of businesses that are associated all the way around that. So think about like the food trucks that come to construction sites, and just everybody associated that supports housing in some way. There are just a lot of people involved. So that's what I mean by, so much of our society is involved in housing in one form or another.
Do you think socially, like a person, let's say who's 30, who buys a house and they tell their friends, I just bought a house. Do you think there's some social like, reward that they get for being able to say they're a homeowner?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that they feel good about themselves, that they feel like grown-ups. Well, there is something to be said for that. They're not living in mom's
They have
basement.
no furniture. They have a TV and a PS4, but they feel like grown-ups because they own the house.
That's right. That's right. Look, I was one of those people too. Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for that. It's just that first independent step into adulthood beyond maybe purchasing your first car.
Okay, so now we talked about demand. There's a substantial demand, even with affordability being like the worst it's been in a while. Like affordability is not that hot, but there's still this really strong demand. Now we're talking about supply. Okay. Now there was this theory that the prices would crash because all these people would dump their houses, which we found out it hasn't been happening. There's a quote from the article that I'm pretty sure the person who wrote this watches the videos. This is what it says. This is one element of the housing market. Nominal prices tend to be sticky to the downside. Homeowners that cannot get their target price often stay in the home, take it off the market, or even rent it and wait for a buyer. Supply drops as fast, if not faster, than demand. So demand drops off, supply sort of matches it because we're not in a market where people have to sell like they did 2006 to 2010, call it, where they were like, I got to get out of this thing, right?
Right. Yeah, people are not, they're not panic selling.
They're not panic selling. Here's another part that I think, so people saw what happened in 2008. They saw a price run up, and they see the price run up now. And then, so they're expecting the same result. They're expecting the same outcome.
Right, but that's taking a very myopic view because there are a lot more variables.
Okay, but except for the people who watch our channel who are super smart, most people want to make decisions with as little information as possible because if you get too much information, your brain, there's a subconscious part of your brain gets paralyzed. It's like when you walk into a bookstore and you say, hey, I want to get a book on something, or I just want to find some good reading. And you're all of a sudden you start looking at books and then you realize you're just overwhelmed with choices. And most people walk out. Like they don't get a book.
I get a whole bunch of books.
You get a whole bunch of books, okay. And then you just return them.
I do not return.
But what I'm saying is, do you think that that people want to make decisions with as little information as possible? And the obvious one is this thing where prices went up. And then if you look at that, they must be getting ready to crash.
Well, I think people want to make decisions with little information, not because they're disinterested in having more information, but I think that they simply feel that they have enough information to make a decision, and any more information will not contribute to their decision-making process. And
Okay.
I don't think that people are particularly patient to do the research, and I think sometimes more information leaves them less certain of their decision.
Okay. The last housing bust that we had with much higher mortgage rates, we had a recession that pushed up unemployment. At the peak, distressed home sales made up 49% of all total home sales. But the housing market today is funded with tightly underwritten fixed rate debt. Distressed sellers are around 1% of sales. That should help the housing market avoid another price crash and squeak out a gain in 2023. So we had 49 times more foreclosed homes the last housing crash that we have now. So literally we have 2% of the number of foreclosures that we had.
Right.
And that 2% is basically the normal numbers you would have even if houses were free, because you would still have people die or people get divorced or they just stop making the payment for whatever reason.
Right. Yeah, and that happens. I mean, we do run into those people every once in a while where they've had some life event and they just literally up and leave and abandon the house and leave the country and whatever, and they just don't look back.
Okay, let's talk because you have a lot of numbers in your head about, and most of them are good. They're not lotto numbers. about the overall supply of homes. So we have a home shortage.
Right.
This home shortage started after the great financial crisis, when home builders stopped building homes to satisfy demand. Why did they do that? Why did home builders say, we're going to back off and stop building for a while?
Well, some of them went out of business altogether. So
Small builders.
Right.
Okay, gone. Most of them.
Right.
Okay.
They're gone. The bigger builders, they just they wanted to weather it out by not building anymore and waiting to get rid of their existing inventory, and also waiting for the market to come back because they obviously have some numbers that they have to meet. Land is expensive, labor is expensive, materials are expensive. And then, of course, once the housing market started to come back, it takes a long time for them to spool back up and be able to actually put up homes. You have to start with purchasing land, and depending on where you are, purchasing land could be difficult because you've got all kinds of local, state regulations and that sort of thing. You have to get your plans approved, your financing in place, get all your vendors lined up, and it's a whole big production. So from the minute that you decide that you want to build something until you actually are on site, you haven't put up anything, but the minute that you're on site, it's years. And we're not talking about one or two. Generally, it's more than that. It takes years to just get on site, and then you start grading the land and bringing in infrastructure, and eventually putting up a house.
Okay. Here's a quote from the article that has 2 great points in one sentence. This is comparing it from the global financial crisis. Home sales over the past several years have been to end users, not speculators, and new home construction since the GFC has not kept up with household formation, implying a housing shortage of almost 4 million homes nationally. So we have 4 million less homes than we should, not on the market, just out there for people to buy. So people have a choice then, because this is, I think we're going to wrap this up. You have a choice. You either buy a house or you rent a house.
Right.
And rents are pretty expensive, but homes are pretty expensive. So people are kind of stuck in this weird area right now. Maybe it didn't feel this way 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. The other thing to keep in mind is that you may think, well, fine, I won't rent a house, I'll rent an apartment. But to that end, multifamily units are not necessarily any more affordable because we're not putting up as many as maybe we would like, partly because interest rates are high, cost of labor is high, labor is scarce, there are materials issues. So all of that is playing into builders that build multifamily kind of taking a step back and waiting until it is more profitable for them to put up multifamily units. So that means that even if you're saying, fine, I won't rent a house, I'll rent an apartment, you're not necessarily in a better position, which contributes to what Todd said, that we just don't have enough units for everybody who needs to find a place to live.
The other thing I want to point out, because people keep talking about the number of apartments, there's a lot of apartment complexes all over the U.S. going on, especially in places like Las Vegas. But these are not your standard, they're $700 a month rent. Most of these places that I'm seeing built, they're like $3,000 a month. They're more than a house, but they're luxury apartments. They're very high end. They're catering to, unmarried people, that have relatively good incomes that are looking to be completely taken care of. They have a gym on site. They have underground parking. They don't have to deal with a yard. It's more like community living type of a thing.
Right. They have the doggy park. They have concierge service sometimes. They have all kinds of services. So they're different than maybe the apartments that we were accustomed to a few decades ago. So if you're in our age group, they're not the apartments that maybe we rented when we were that age.
Right. Yeah. I think my first apartment was like $350 a month. No, it's $375. Okay. I'm going to give you the final sort of your take on this whole thing. Home prices adjusted, they've moderated. Home prices are still up year over year. This is January of 2023. So home prices are still up from January 2022, although that's clearly shrinking. Likely by the time we get to the spring, home prices will have declined a bit year over year because home prices are down from last June. But everything we saw, almost everybody predicted most people predicted these really moderate changes in home prices. And some even said, oh no, we think home prices will still be up next year. Despite people, like in the one hand, they would say, well, Florida's even going to keep doing great. Home prices are going to go up, rents are going to go up. And then the next person literally said, the worst place it's going to be is in Florida where home prices are and rents will drop 15%. And you're like, okay. So I guess obviously I don't know what they're looking at, but they come up with completely divergent answers. So what's sort of your take on the whole, like the general thing? Because that was a massive article.
It was a massive article. I think my take on the whole article was that for the most part, 2023 is going to be flat. I mean, you're going to have some people be a little bit up, some people be a little bit down, but overall, when you're looking at the country as a whole, I think it's going to be pretty flat. I'm not expecting a whole lot of excitement in the interest rate world either. I don't think it's going to go up substantially or down substantially. I think it's going to kind of puddle along. And I think that's part of the reason why the real estate market's going to be substantially flat. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have an exciting spring. Okay, I think that the spring is going to be not the way spring of last year was, but I think spring is going to be more exciting than the rest of the year. You're going to see some multiple offers again. You're going to see sellers doing well again. Not in all markets, but in some markets, I think you're going to see that. I do think that while globally that there's a lot going on and it does influence all of us, of course, I just think that the market right now is just set up for a very even keel year. I'm not expecting a whole lot of excitement, honestly, regardless of what goes on internationally, unless we have some other major catastrophe.
External event.
Just the craziness that is the world is not going to be sufficient to impact our real estate market in the U.S. substantially.
Yeah, I think so. Anecdotally, I'm going to tell them the story about the house we were looking at. We were looking at a house in an area that you would say, if we said the area, the part of the U.S., oh, that's a crashing market. That area, I've heard bad things about it. We had people comment on it and said, in that specific market, its prices are already crashing. And this was basically an investment home / second home. And it was not a low-end property. And it was, they got multiple cash offers over list price within 3 days. And by the time we kind of got enough information about the property to decide if we want to make an offer or not, they said, yeah, it's already off the market. It's already been sold. And we're like, what? I thought the real estate market was supposed to be really bad. So the market's not really bad. The spring, I think, is going to get interesting. We are not saying now is a good time to buy. We've never said now is a good time to buy. We're just trying to point out all the breadth of what's happening in the market.
And my sentiment is it's always a good time to buy. It's always a good time to sell for you specifically for a specific property, right? There are always opportunities in every market is what I mean by that. It doesn't mean that it's across the board. It doesn't even mean that it's your street versus the street next to you. It just means that keep your eyes open and there are always opportunities for those who are willing to see them.
All right.
So if you liked the video, if it was interesting, entertaining, if we made you laugh, if we bored you, whatever it was, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the video, share the video, leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about 2023. What do you think it will bring? We've already told you what we think and what lots of economists think. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.